Some time ago, this new drawing mode was introduced into Adobe Illustrator called Draw Inside. And the way that this works is it sets up this thing called a clipping mask, where we create our object, and then we switch to the Draw Inside mode down here. And when you do that, it sets up a sort of a live system for drawing inside of artwork. And anything that you draw outside will be nicely clipped. And then we can just switch back to the normal drawing mode, and then this moves around just like if it was a single thing. Now what this is doing is it's setting up a group with a clipping mask. So what exactly is a clipping mask, and how do we set one up outside of this draw inside button, and then how do we modify the contents of that clipping mask? Well, first up, if we want to modify the contents of a clipping mask, up here in our context sensitive bar we can change modes into edit contents, and now we can move the contents of that around instead of the clipping mask. So again, I just click on that button to change modes, and I can move the contents around. And then as soon as I deselect out of that, then I'm back into the regular mode of editing the thing. So what if I want to add something to it? If I want to add something to something that's inside of a clipping mask, I can just double click on it to enter into isolation mode. And then I can add additional objects inside there that are clipped out. Let's go ahead and set up a clipping mask in a more traditional sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some shapes, and then I'm going to draw on top of that the shape that I want to clip. So I have those. I'm going to select all of the things that I want to be involved in this operation. I'm going to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. And you'll see that whatever was underneath that red shape is now visible, and anything outside of that red shape is now invisible. Now the thing to remember about clipping mask is that it's always the thing that's on top that's the important thing. My red star that was on top is the important thing that clipped everything else away. One important function of the clipping mask is to use it to crop images. So I'm just going to drag and drop an image in here. And remember that when you drag and drop an image, or if you place an image, you'll typically get this X through your image, which means that the image is referenced and it's not going to be embedded in your Adobe Illustrator file. So we can click on Embed up here, and now the image will be saved as part of our Adobe Illustrator file. Now I can grab a rectangle, I can select the part of the image I want to crop, make sure that shape is on top. Now I can select both of these, and I can go up to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. And now I have that. If I want to resize it or rotate it, I have the option to do so. Now the nice thing about this way of cropping images is that we're not limited to just simple crops. We can make crops of any shape we want. Now I have that cropped with rounded corners. Or I can crop it out with a square, a star, or even draw with the pen tool. For example. So you're not limited to the kind of crop that you do when you use a clipping mask. Let me delete this. So we can create a clipping mask by creating a bunch of shapes. Give it a stroke on the outline so we can see what's going on. Make a bunch of shapes, but the object on top we want to clip out. This could be, again, anything, text or whatever. And we can make our selection and go up to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. Let me undo that. Or we can actually do this on the layer level, which can be kind of nice, because if we look in here on our layer, there's a little button down here called Make or Release Clipping Mask. Right there. And what happens when we click that is that it uses whatever the path is at the very, very top of our layer to clip out everything else. So on the layer level, I'm going to click Make Release Clipping Mask. Now the benefit of this is that it's much easier to edit the contents of our clipping mask this way. It's harder to move around the element, like pick that star and move it around like I did when it was a group, but that's okay. Sometimes this is the way to go when you want to maybe paint in some nice detail into your scene. And you set up a layer specifically for paint details, and you don't want to have to worry about drawing outside of the lines. Then this could work especially great for you. To have a layer specifically set up for painting highlights or shadows on top of your illustration. Let me go ahead and delete all this and show you one last thing. We can't finish talking about clipping masks without mentioning compound paths. Now what a compound path is normally in Illustrator we have objects that are separated. And we cannot make these into a single object. We could group them. And down here it looks like a group. But still we have individual paths inside of that group. And if we wanted to use these for clipping mask, let me send this to the back, object arrange, send to back, something like this. Let me make this a different color so we can see it easier. If we wanted to make these clipping masks, we would have to do this clipping mask make over and over and over again. But there's an easier way, and that's this thing called the compound path. So what we'll do is we'll select all these, and we'll go up to Object, Compound Path, and Make. And now a compound path has been created, and a compound path is a special path in Adobe Illustrator that basically allows multiple paths to be treated as a single entity. And so now that thing is on top, and I can make this a clipping mask. And we'll see that those are clipped out. See it in the group. Now one thing you might have noticed is that when we used the draw inside, we kept the shape that we used, but in every other instance that I've created clipping masks, the shape has disappeared. Well, that kind of makes sense because our shape was on top, and if we kept it, we wouldn't be able to see anything that was underneath it. So, of course, that makes sense in that context, but in the draw inside, that original shape is left. So what's going on? Well, what's happened is our compound path has lost its attributes. So we can click on the appearance bubble here next to the compound path, bring it up in the appearance tab, and you can see that all that Adobe Illustrator has done, it has taken away the stroke and the fill for this clipping mask. And we can apply a new stroke here, and you can see that now we get our stroke back, and we can even apply a fill. So there we go. We have our compound path, and its attributes are back. And we can move it around in the stack, and you'll see that it doesn't actually affect our thing at all. So I'll draw in a couple extra circles in here, and you can see that the position of that compound path does not affect the final result, because that could be on the bottom or it can be on the top, and it doesn't affect anything else. And again, click on the appearance bubble to load up the appearance tab, and we can get rid of our fill and our stroke, which is typically the way the clipping mask works, unless you're using the Draw Inside button. And that was a short talk about the clipping masks in Adobe Illustrator. Thank you.